A soft rain fell over Dora Fortress droplets, glistening in the glow of hundreds of torches that lined the courtyard. The flames danced with the gentle wind, casting elongated shadows across the ancient stone walls. Emmett Dunn stood beneath the alien sky, his Terran flight jacket soaked at the shoulders. He wasn't supposed to be here, not in this part of the fortress, not during this sacred ceremony, and definitely not making eye contact with Lady Era. Yet here, he was a human pilot from Earth, standing frozen as 6 pairs of Kaldorian eyes locked onto him, with expressions ranging from shock to outrage. "You dare interrupt the ritual of solstice blessing?" Lady Era's voice cut through the patter of rain. Her silver-blue skin shimmered in the torchlight, highlighting the delicate pattern of scales that traced her cheekbones. Behind her, 5 handmaidens formed a protective semicircle, each wearing ceremonial robes that matched the deep purple of Era's elaborate gown. Emmett raised his hands in a universal gesture of peace. "My apologies, Lady Era. The docking officer directed me here for the trade negotiation. I wasn't informed about any ritual." Typical Terran arrogance. One of the handmaidens muttered, her voice just loud enough to be heard. Lady Era raised a slender hand, silencing her attendant. "The Kaldorian Terran Peace Accord grants you passage through our trading post, Captain Dunn, but it does not permit interruption of sacred rites." Emmett tried not to fidget under the intense scrutiny. 3 weeks of diplomatic training hadn't prepared him for this. He was a pilot, not a diplomat. The mission was supposed to be simple: deliver Terran medical supplies, negotiate for Kaldorian mineral rights, and return to Earth. Cultural misunderstandings weren't in his mission parameters. "I apologize again for the intrusion," Emmett said, bowing his head slightly. "I'll return when the ceremony has concluded." As he turned to leave, a massive figure stepped between Emmett and the doorway. Standing nearly 7 feet tall, with shoulders broad enough to fill the entire exit, the Kaldorian warrior regarded Emmett with cold contempt. The warrior's ceremonial armor gleamed in the torchlight, the metal plates trimmed with gold that matched the insignia on his chest, the royal emblem of House Era. "This human has dishonored you, my lady," the warrior said, his deep voice resonating through the chamber. "Such disrespect cannot go unanswered." Lady Era's expression shifted, a flash of something concerned perhaps crossing her features, before the regal mask returned. "Stand down, Dirac." The human meant no offense. But Dirac was already drawing his ceremonial blade, a curved sword that caught the torchlight along its polished edge. "The laws of Caloria are clear. To interrupt the ritual of blessing is to challenge the authority of the one being blessed." His eyes narrowed as he studied Emmett. "Unless the Terran wishes to make proper amends." Emmett tensed his hand instinctively, moving toward the combat knife strapped to his thigh, standard issue for pilots, venturing beyond Earth's sphere of influence. "What exactly would proper amends entail?" Lady Era stepped forward, her gown rustling against the stone floor. "Dirac speaks of the challenge of honor. It is not necessary in this case. But it is tradition, my lady." One of the handmaidens said, her tone firm, despite her deference. This one was taller than the others, with a warrior's build beneath her ceremonial robes. "And traditions must be upheld, especially in times of change." Emmett caught the political undertones. The trading post at Caloria was new, the peace between their species fragile. Every interaction was being watched, judged. "I understand," Emmett said, straightening his posture. "If there's a way to make proper amends, I'm willing to try." "The human accepts the challenge," Dirac announced, his lips curling into what might have been a smile on a less intimidating face. "As the lady's champion, I stand ready to defend her honor." Lady Era's eyes widened. "Captain Dunn, you misunderstand. The challenge of honor is a duel, often to the death." Too late, Emmett realized his error. But to back down now would create an even greater diplomatic incident. He was representing all of Earth in this moment, and weakness would not be respected. "I accept the terms," Emmett said, drawing his combat knife. It looked pitifully small compared to Dirac's ceremonial sword. Lady Era exchanged glances with her handmaidens, a silent communication passing between them. Then she nodded, once a regal acknowledgment of what could not be avoided. "Very well. The challenge of honor shall commence at dawn. Prepare yourself, Captain Dunn." She turned to leave her handmaidens forming a protective formation around her. As they passed, the youngest-looking handmaiden caught Emmett's eye, her expression a mixture of pity and fascination. She quickly looked away when Durak growled low in his throat, a warning that didn't need translation. Left alone with the Kaldorian champion, Emmett maintained his guard. Durak studied him with predatory intensity before finally sheathing his blade. "I have killed 17 challengers in honor duels," Durak said, matter-of-factly. "You will be the first human, a distinction of sorts." With that ominous promise, the warrior strode from the chamber, leaving Emmett alone with the sound of rain against stone, and the sinking realization that he had 24 hours to prepare for a fight he was almost certainly going to lose. The night passed in restless preparation. Emmett's assigned quarters in the diplomatic wing of the fortress were luxurious by military standards, but comfort was the last thing on his mind. He spent hours reviewing the scant information available on Kaldorian combat techniques, practicing with his knife, and eventually sending an encrypted message to his commanding officer explaining the situation. The response was predictably unhelpful. Maintain diplomatic relations. Survive. Complete the mission. Dawn arrived with a knock at his door. A Kaldorian servant distinguishable from the nobility by his simpler attire and lack of facial markings bowed deeply. "The challenge awaits Earth, Captain." Emmett followed the servant through a series of corridors and into an open courtyard he hadn't seen before. Circular in design with high walls, it resembled ancient Roman arenas from Earth's history. Stone benches rose in tiers around the sand-covered fighting ground, and already they were filling with Kaldorian spectators, mostly nobles, judging by their elaborate clothing and jewelry. At the highest point of the arena sat Lady Era, surrounded by her 5 handmaidens. Each attendant wore a different colored robe, now deep red forest green, ocean blue sunset orange, and twilight purple. Lady Era herself was dressed in gleaming silver that caught the morning light and scattered it like stars. Opposite, Emmett Durak entered the arena to thunderous applause. The champion had exchanged his ceremonial armor for lighter fighting gear that still offered considerable protection while allowing for greater mobility. His sword was different too, still curved but more practical than the ceremonial blade from the night before. A dignified Kaldorian stepped into the center of the arena, raising his hands for silence. "Today, we witness the challenge of honor between Durak, champion of House Era, and Emmett Dunn, captain of Earth." The pronouncement carried a formal weight. "The challenge will continue until submission, incapacitation, or death. May the spirits of our ancestors witness the truth of combat." The Kaldorian stepped back, and Durak immediately advanced, sword raised. Emmett circled cautiously, knife held in a reverse grip. The size and reach disparity between them was laughable, but Emmett had one advantage. Durak was overconfident. The first strike came fast, a sweeping cut that would have decapitated Emmett if he hadn't ducked beneath it. He rolled away as Durak recovered with surprising agility, bringing the sword around for another attack. Emmett dodged again, studying his opponent's movements. Durak was skilled, but he fought with the certainty of someone who had never lost. There was predictability in that certainty. After several minutes of defensive maneuvering, Emmett finally saw his opening. As Durak committed to a powerful downward stroke, Emmett sidestepped and slashed at the exposed wrist. His knife connected, drawing first blood, a startling blue, that dripped onto the sand. The crowd gasped. Durak roared in pain and fury, his attacks becoming more aggressive, but less controlled. Emmett continued to evade, making small cuts when opportunities presented themselves. He knew he couldn't win through attrition alone, but perhaps he could force a submission through exhaustion or frustration. But Durak was a champion for a reason. Adjusting his strategy, the Kaldorian warrior slowed his attacks, becoming more methodical. He began herding Emmett toward one edge of the arena, limiting his mobility. In the stands, Lady Era leaned forward, her expression unreadable. Her handmaidens watched with varying reactions. The warrior-like one seemed to be analyzing the fight professionally. Another looked worried. A third was taking notes on a small device. The youngest appeared fascinated, and the last maintained a perfect mask of court etiquette. Emmett realized too late that he'd been backed against the wall. Durak charged sword, poised for a killing thrust. In desperation, Emmett dropped to one knee and surged forward, aiming his knife at the gap between Durak's armor plates at the abdomen. The blade sank deep. Durak's momentum carried him forward, impaling himself further. His sword clattered to the ground as he staggered backward, blue blood now flowing freely. The Kaldorian champion looked down at the wound in disbelief, then at Emmett with newfound respect. "Well struck," Durak managed before collapsing to his knees. The arena fell silent. Emmett approached cautiously, uncertain if the duel was truly over. Durak looked up, his breathing labored. "Finish it," the champion whispered. "Honor demands a clean death." Emmett hesitated. On Earth, the fight would be over, medical attention provided. But he was on Caloria, bound by their customs. He looked to Lady Era, silently questioning. She gave a single solemn nod. With a heavy heart, Emmett positioned his knife at Durak's throat. "I'm sorry," he said quietly. "Don't be," Durak replied. "You fought well. My ancestors will welcome me." One swift motion, and it was done. The knife sliced cleanly through, separating Durak's head from his body. Blue blood spilled across the sand, mixing with the light rain that had begun to fall again. The arena remained deathly silent until the same dignified Kaldorian stepped forward. "The challenge is concluded. Emmett Dunn of Earth stands victorious." What happened next took Emmett completely by surprise. Lady Era rose from her seat and descended into the arena, her handmaidens following in solemn procession. She approached Emmett, who still knelt beside Durak's body, and extended her hand. "Rise, Captain Dunn," she said, her voice carrying throughout the arena. "By the ancient laws of Caloria, you have claimed the right of succession." Confused, Emmett accepted her hand and stood. "I don't understand." "Durak was my champion." Lady Era explained, her tone formal, yet tinged with something complex. "By defeating him in honorable combat, you assume his position and all associated privileges and responsibilities." The implications slowly dawned on Emmett as Lady Era continued. "According to our laws, you are now bound to me and my household. My handmaidens are yours to command, and I—" She paused, a flicker of emotion crossing her features, before the regal mask returned. "I am bound to you as consort." Emmett's jaw dropped. "Consort as in—" "Yes," Lady Era confirmed, her voice lowered. "What your Earth customs might crudely call a concubine. This is our way. The strong protect the worthy, and bonds are forged in blood and honor." Before Emmett could process this revelation, a new voice cut through the murmuring crowd. "This is an outrage. A human cannot claim rights of succession over Kaldorian nobility." A tall, imposing Kaldorian male strode into the arena, flanked by guards. His robes were black with gold trim, and a symbol of authority hung from a chain around his neck. Prefect Norland, Lady Era, acknowledged, her tone cooling several degrees. "The challenge was witnessed and valid. The law is clear." "The law was never meant to apply to aliens." Norland spat, looking at Emmett with undisguised contempt. "This human came here as a trade envoy, not to claim one of our most esteemed houses." "Nevertheless," Era countered, "the challenge was issued by my champion, and accepted in good faith. The ancestors have spoken through combat." Norland's face darkened. "The High Council will hear of this. Until then, I suggest the human refrain from exercising any claimed rights." With a final glare, he turned and left the arena, his guards marching in perfect formation behind him. Emmett looked at Lady Era, completely lost. "I didn't come here to claim anyone or anything. I'm just a pilot on a trade mission." And yet here we are, Era replied, a hint of irony in her voice. Come, we have much to discuss, and the arena is not the place for it. As they left the arena, Emmett became acutely aware of the hundreds of Kaldorian eyes following his every move. Whatever diplomatic incident he had stumbled into last night had just escalated beyond his wildest imagination. He was no longer just a pilot on a mission. He had somehow become the new champion and consort claimer of a Kaldorian noble house. And based on Prefect Norland's reaction, he had also made a powerful enemy. Lady Era led Emmett and her handmaidens to a private chamber within the fortress, a spacious room with windows overlooking the Kaldorian capital city below. Once the doors were closed, the formality between them shifted slightly. You should sit, Era suggested, gesturing to an arrangement of cushioned seats. The aftermath of combat can be disorienting. Now that the adrenaline was fading, Emmett did feel slightly unsteady. He took a seat, noting how the handmaidens arranged themselves around the room, not sitting, but taking up positions that suggested both protection and service. I need to understand exactly what just happened, Emmett said, and what it means. Era nodded to one of her handmaidens, the one with the note-taking device, who stepped forward. Lena will explain the legal parameters. She is most knowledgeable about our customs and their historical context. Lena bowed slightly before addressing Emmett. Captain Dunn, the Challenge of Honor dates back to our pre-space civilization era. When a champion is defeated, the victor assumes not only their position, but their bonds of loyalty and protection. In ancient times, this meant claiming the defeated's household properties and personal relationships. So I'm now responsible for Lady Era and all of you, Emmett clarified. Yes and no, Lena continued. You have claimed the right to our loyalty and, she hesitated, our intimacy should you desire it. But you are also bound to protect us, provide for us, and represent our interests in all matters. Emmett ran a hand through his hair, processing this information. On Earth we don't. This would be considered highly inappropriate. People don't become property through combat. We are not property, Era interjected, her tone sharp. The bond is sacred and mutual. I am still Lady of House Era. My position in court remains unchanged. What has changed is that you now stand where Dirac once stood as my champion and potential consort. Potential, Emmett seized on the word. The bond must be sealed through ritual, the youngest handmaiden explained, then blushed deeply when everyone looked at her. Forgive me, my lady. I spoke out of turn. Era's expression softened. It's all right, Ellen. You are correct. She turned back to Emmett. The bond is technically incomplete until the ritual of union. Until then, you may consider it provisional. Emmett felt a small measure of relief. At least he wasn't already married by alien law. And what does Prefect Norland have to do with all this? The atmosphere in the room tensed noticeably. The warrior-like handmaiden moved closer to the door, as if expecting trouble. Prefect Norland has sought alliance with House Era for many years, Lena explained carefully. He hoped to arrange a union between his house and ours through traditional channels. He wanted to marry you, Emmett asked Era directly. He wanted the power and influence that comes with such a union, Era corrected. And access to certain artifacts that have been in my family's care for generations. The handmaiden by the door spoke up. He's dangerous. He controls the planetary defense grid and has many supporters in the military caste. Thank you, Tara, Era acknowledged. Captain Dunn should indeed be aware of the potential threat. She considered Emmett thoughtfully. You have inadvertently stepped into Kaldorian high politics, Captain. Norland will not accept this development easily. Emmett's mind raced. What had started as a simple trade mission had spiraled into an interplanetary political crisis with potential diplomatic ramifications. I need to contact my superiors, he said. This goes beyond my authority as a mission pilot. Of course, Era nodded. Lena can assist you with establishing a secure communication channel. But Captain, she hesitated, It would be unwise to leave the fortress unprotected until this matter is resolved. Norland's influence extends throughout the city. The implication was clear. Emmett was now a target. In the meantime, Era continued. Perhaps you should become acquainted with those now under your protection. She gestured to her handmaidens. You've met Lena, our scholar and record keeper, and Tara, our security specialist. The others are Mira, master of court etiquette and negotiation, Dora, our ritual specialist, and Ellen, the youngest, still completing her training in household management. Each handmaiden acknowledged her introduction with a bow. Emmett nodded awkwardly in return, still struggling to reconcile these formal introductions with the bizarre fact that by Kaldorian law, he now had some form of claim over all of them. This is a lot to process, he admitted. We understand, Era said. Rest assured, despite the unusual circumstances, none of us expect you to exercise certain traditional rights. We merely seek your protection until a more permanent solution can be arranged. Emmett caught a flicker of something disagreement perhaps passed between the handmaidens at Era's words, but it was gone too quickly to interpret. For now, Era continued, you should rest and recover from the challenge. We will arrange suitable accommodations within the family quarters. As if on cue, Ellen stepped forward. If you'll follow me, Captain, I'll show you to your chambers. Grateful for the chance to process everything alone, Emmett stood. Thank you. And please call me Emmett. Captain feels a bit formal given the circumstances. Era inclined her head slightly. As you wish, Emmett. Following Ellen through the winding corridors of the fortress, Emmett tried to make sense of his new reality. In less than 24 hours, he had gone from ordinary pilot to champion of a Kaldorian noble house with 6 alien women, now technically his concubines, and a powerful prefect positioning himself as an enemy. Somehow, he doubted Terran diplomatic training covered this scenario. His new quarters were spacious and luxurious with large windows overlooking the sprawling Kaldorian capital. Crystalline spires rose in the distance, catching the light of Caloria's sun, slightly redder than Earth's, and refracting it in mesmerizing patterns. These were not prepared for you specifically, Ellen explained watching, as Emmett took in the room. They are the traditional chambers of the House Champion. Emmett noticed certain personal touches that confirmed her words. Weapons mounted on one wall armor, stands in a corner, and a large bed that would have comfortably fit someone of Durak's impressive stature. Durak lived here, he asked, feeling a strange connection to the warrior he had killed. Ellen nodded. For 20 years. He was champion since before I joined Lady Era's household. She looked around the room with a hint of sadness. He was stern but fair. Many feared him, but we respected him. Emmett felt the weight of the man's absence. I'm sorry, I didn't want to kill him. Our ways may seem harsh to outsiders, Ellen said, straightening a decorative object on a side table. But they have purpose. Durak died as he lived with honor, fighting for what he believed in. She looked at Emmett directly. There is no shame in that death, and no blame attached to you for delivering it. Her maturity surprised him, given her apparent youth. How long have you served Lady Era? He asked. 3 years, Ellen replied. I was chosen from my education caste when Lady Era needed a 5th handmaiden to complete her court. She smiled slightly. I'm still learning many of the traditional skills, but Lady Era is a patient teacher. Emmett was about to ask more when a chime sounded. Ellen moved to the door and opened it, revealing Lena. The communication channel is ready, Lena announced, and Lady Era requests your presence afterward for the evening meal. Thank you, Emmett said. Lead the way. The communication center was a stark contrast to the traditional aesthetic of the rest of the fortress, all modern technology and blinking lights. Lena efficiently established a secure connection to Emmett's commanding officer, then discreetly stepped outside to give him privacy. Commander Walsh's face appeared on the screen, his expression shifting from professional neutrality to concern as Emmett explained the situation. Let me get this straight, Walsh said when Emmett finished. You accidentally interrupted a ritual, got challenged to a duel, killed the local champion, and now You're legally bound to an alien noblewoman and her 5 handmaidens." "That about sums it up, sir," Emmett confirmed. Walsh pinched the bridge of his nose. "And this Prefect Norland character is positioning himself as hostile?" "Yes, sir. According to Lady Era, he's been trying to arrange a marriage alliance for years. He sees me as an obstacle." "This complicates our trade negotiations considerably," Walsh mused. "On the other hand, your unusual position might give us leverage we didn't have before." Emmett frowned. "Sir, you're now champion of a noble house done. According to your report, that gives you significant social standing. We could use that to push for better terms on the mineral rights." "With all due respect, sir, these people aren't bargaining chips. They're now under my protection by their own laws." Walsh studied him for a moment. "Developing a personal attachment already, Captain. Remember your mission priorities." "My priority is to maintain positive diplomatic relations," Emmett countered. "And right now, that means honoring my position as House Era's champion while we figure this out." After some further discussion, Walsh reluctantly agreed. "Very well. Maintain your position and protection of Lady Era and her household. Continue gathering information and we'll reassess in 48 hours. And done." Walsh leaned closer to the screen. "Be careful. We don't know enough about Kaldorian politics to predict how this will play out." The connection ended, leaving Emmett with the uncomfortable feeling that his superior officer saw the situation primarily as a potential strategic advantage, rather than the complex cultural and personal dilemma it was. When he emerged from the communication center, Emmett found not only Lena waiting for him, but also Tara, the security specialist. The warrior handmaiden stood at attention, her posture military precise. "I will escort you to the dining hall," Tara announced. "Security protocols have been upgraded in light of Prefect Norland's reaction to the challenge outcome." As they walked, Emmett studied Tara's movements, smooth, efficient, constantly scanning their surroundings. "You have military training," he observed. "I was elite guard before joining Lady Era's household," Tara confirmed, without breaking stride. "When her previous security handmaiden retired, I was selected as replacement." "Selected or assigned?" Emmett asked. Tara glanced at him. "Both. The position is prestigious and many applied. Lady Era made the final selection from a list of qualified candidates. So you all chose to be handmaidens. It's not forced service." This time, Tara stopped walking to face him directly. "Captain Dunn, handmaidens to a noble house are not servants. We are specialist advisors, confidants, and protectors. The position comes with significant social status and privilege." "I apologize," Emmett said quickly. "I'm still learning about your culture." Tara nodded once, accepting the apology, and resumed walking. "To answer your question, yes, we all chose this path. We serve Lady Era out of loyalty and respect, not obligation." The dining hall was intimate by fortress standards, designed for a small group rather than grand banquets. Lady Era and the other 3 handmaidens were already seated when Emmett arrived. Era gestured to an open chair at her right hand, a position of honor. "I trust your communication with your superiors was successful," Era inquired, once Emmett was seated. "As successful as could be expected," Emmett replied diplomatically. "They're processing the situation." "As are we all," Era said with a hint of dry humor. She raised a delicate crystal glass. "Two unexpected alliances." Dinner was a surprisingly comfortable affair. The formality that had dominated their earlier interactions gradually relaxed as the meal progressed. Emmett learned more about each of the women, Mira's diplomatic skills and knowledge of interplanetary etiquette, Dora's expertise in Kaldorian ritual traditions and their scientific underpinnings, Lena's methodical approach to historical record-keeping and legal precedent, Tara's tactical assessments and security protocols, and Ellen's enthusiasm for learning everything from household management to basic combat skills. Throughout the meal, Emmett caught moments of genuine affection between the women, inside jokes, knowing glances, gentle teasing. They functioned not just as a formal household, but as a family of sorts. Era, despite her noble status, treated her handmaidens with obvious respect and care. As the evening wound down, Era addressed the immediate future. Emmett, as champion, you are expected to participate in certain ceremonial duties. Tomorrow begins the Festival of Alignment, a 3-day celebration that marks the alignment of Caloria's 3 moons. What would these duties entail? Emmett asked cautiously. Primarily, protective escort, Era explained. You would accompany me to various ceremonial functions throughout the capital. It is an opportunity for the public to see the new champion of House Era. And for Prefect Norland to make his displeasure known, Tara added bluntly. Era didn't contradict her. There is that possibility, yes, but to hide away would show weakness. My house cannot afford to appear vulnerable, especially now. Emmett understood the political necessity. I'll accompany you, of course, but I should warn you that I know nothing about Caldorian ceremonial protocols. Mira will instruct you, Era said, nodding to the handmaiden specialized in court etiquette. And Lena has prepared a data tablet with essential information about the festival and its significance. As the dinner concluded, Era rose from her seat. Rest well, Emmett. Tomorrow will be challenging in ways different from today's trial by combat. Emmett returned to his chambers with Lena's data tablet, spending several hours studying Caldorian ceremonial protocols and the significance of the upcoming festival. The information was fascinating from an anthropological perspective. Caldorian culture had developed complex astronomical rituals long before they achieved space travel, and many of these traditions persisted despite their advanced technology. A soft knock at his door interrupted his studies. Opening it, he found Mira standing in the corridor, her expression serious. Forgive the late intrusion, she said formally, but there has been a development you should be aware of. Emmett invited her in, noticing how she assessed the room with a diplomat's eye, taking in details, looking for potential advantages or dangers. One of our informants in Prefect Norland's household has sent warning, Mira explained once the door was closed. Norland has requested an emergency session of the High Council to challenge the validity of your claim to championship. Can he do that? Emmett asked. It is unusual, Mira admitted. The challenge of honor is one of our oldest traditions, not typically subject to council oversight. But Norland wields considerable influence, and the involvement of a non-Caldorian is unprecedented. Emmett processed this information. What's his endgame here? What does he really want? Mira's expression became guarded. That is complicated. House Era holds certain artifacts of significant cultural and scientific value. Artifacts that Norland covets. Lady Era mentioned something about an artifact. What exactly are we talking about? Mira hesitated clearly, weighing how much to reveal. I cannot speak to the specifics without Lady Era's permission, but I can tell you that House Era has been custodian of the heart of Caloria for generations. It is more than a symbol. Before Emmett could press for more details, another knock came at the door. This time, it was Tara, her posture tense. We have movement at the East Gate, she reported. Norland's personal guard requesting entry on council business. Mira's eyes widened. The council session isn't scheduled until tomorrow. It appears Norland isn't waiting for official channels, Tara said grimly. She looked at Emmett. As champion, your authority can deny them entry to Era's personal quarters, but not to the fortress itself. Emmett made a quick decision. Wake Lady Era, secure the household. I'll address Norland's guards personally. The next hour passed in a blur of activity. Emmett, now dressed in a modified version of the champion's ceremonial armor, hastily adjusted to fit his human frame, stood at the entrance to House Era's private wing of the fortress. Behind him, Tara had positioned herself as secondary defense, while Lena, Mira, and Dora attended to Lady Era. Ellen had been tasked with securing what Emmett now suspected was the mysterious heart of Caloria. When Prefect Norland arrived flanked by 6 armed guards, Emmett was struck by the man's commanding presence. Taller than most Caldorians, and with facial markings that indicated high status, Norland carried himself with the absolute certainty of someone accustomed to getting his way. Human. Norland addressed Emmett without preamble. You will step aside. I have council authority to speak with Lady Era regarding matters of planetary security. Prefect Norland. Emmett replied, keeping his tone respectful but firm. As champion of House Era, I must request to see this authority in writing, and I'm afraid any meeting with Lady Era will need to be scheduled through proper channels. Norland's eyes narrowed. You dare question my authority? I am Prefect of Planetary Defense. I question nobody's authority, Emmett clarified. I merely follow protocol, as is my duty as champion. One of Norland's guards stepped forward, hand moving toward his weapon, but Norland stopped him with a gesture. The prefect studied Emmett with cold calculation. Very well, since you insist on protocol. Norland produced a data tablet and thrust it toward Emmett. Council authorization bearing the seal of 3 high houses. Even a human should recognize its validity. Emmett examined the document carefully before passing it to Tara, who verified its authenticity with a subtle nod. The authorization appears in order, Emmett conceded. However, given the late hour, I must request that your guards remain here while you alone meet with Lady Era. She has already been awakened and is preparing to receive you in the formal audience chamber. This compromise clearly displeased Norland, but with the official document now acknowledged, he had limited grounds for objection. Very well. My guards will remain. But know this, human, your interference in Caldorian affairs will not stand. The council will rule on your claim tomorrow, and I suspect you will find yourself quickly removed from a position you have no right to hold. Emmett simply bowed the gesture deliberately, just shallow enough to be technically respectful, while conveying his lack of intimidation. This way, Prefect. The audience chamber was smaller than Emmett had expected, but beautifully appointed with ancient tapestries and crystalline light fixtures that cast a gentle blue glow over the proceedings. Lady Era sat on a raised dais, dressed in formal attire despite the late hour. Her handmaidens flanked her, each positioned according to their function. Mira, closest as diplomatic advisor Lena, with records at the ready, Dora standing near a small ritual altar, and Ellen, slightly behind, observing and learning. Norland entered with practiced confidence, performing the formal gestures of greeting with fluid precision. Lady Era, forgive the late intrusion, but matters of state cannot always wait for convenient hours. Prefect Norland, Era acknowledged, her voice cool. What matter of planetary security requires such urgency? A security breach of the highest order, Norland replied smoothly. My sensors detected unusual energy readings, emanating from House Era's private quarters earlier today. Readings consistent with activation of ancient technology. Era's expression revealed nothing, but Emmett noticed a slight tensing of her posture. House Era's artifacts are our responsibility, as they have been for generations. Their status is not a matter for planetary defense. When those artifacts generate energy signatures that could potentially be detected off-world, they become my concern, Norland countered. Particularly when a Terran has recently claimed position as your champion and now has access to said artifacts. Emmett remained silent, observing the verbal sparring. This was clearly about more than his unexpected championship. Norland was using the situation to make a move for whatever this heart of Caloria truly was. Your concern is noted, Prefect, Era said, after a measured pause. However, I assure you that House Era's artifacts remain secure and dormant. Perhaps your sensors detected the energy discharge from today's Challenge of Honor ritual combat does release considerable bioelectric energy. Norland's eyes narrowed slightly, recognizing the deflection. My sensors are quite precise, Lady Era, but let us set that aside for the moment. I come with a proposal that may resolve several concerns simultaneously. I'm listening, Era said, her tone giving away nothing. The High Council convenes tomorrow to rule on the validity of a non-Caldorian claiming championship through the Challenge of Honor. Regardless of the outcome this creates, instability for House Era. Norland paced slowly before the dais. I propose an alliance between our houses, a traditional union that would strengthen both our positions and ensure the continued protection of House Era's historical artifacts. Emmett didn't need Mira's subtle hand signal to recognize a marriage proposal when he heard one. The timing was opportunistic, bordering on predatory. Norland was using the uncertainty of Emmett's position to press his advantage. Your proposal is unexpected, Prefect, Era replied carefully. As you noted, the Council has yet to rule on Captain Dunn's championship claim. It would be premature to consider new alliances before that matter is settled. On the contrary, Norland pressed, securing your position now would strengthen your standing before the Council. They would be more inclined to rule in your favor if House Era had the backing of planetary defense. Era's gaze flicked briefly to Emmett, then back to Norland. I appreciate your concern for House Era's political position, Prefect. However, hasty decisions rarely serve long-term interests. I will consider your proposal and provide a formal response after the Council's ruling. It was a diplomatic non-answer, and Norland clearly recognized it as such. His expression hardened momentarily before he reassumed his mask of political civility. Of course, consideration is all I ask. He bowed, the gesture precise, and yet somehow conveying subtle threat rather than respect. Until tomorrow, then. After Norland departed with his guards, the chamber remained silent for several long moments. Finally, Era sighed, allowing a fraction of her tension to show. That, she said, was anticipated but not welcome. He's making a play for the heart, Dora observed, moving from her position near the ritual altar. The energy signature excuse was just that, an excuse. Era nodded. Norland has coveted the heart of Caloria for years. Now he sees opportunity in our unusual circumstances. Emmett looked between them. I think it's time you told me exactly what this heart of Caloria is, and why it's so important that a planetary prefect would use a diplomatic incident to try to get his hands on it. The handmaidens looked to Era, who considered for a moment before giving a slight nod. Lena, secure the chamber. Dora, prepare the ritual of truth-binding. While Lena activated security protocols that would prevent outside surveillance, Dora approached with a small, crystalline container. She opened it to reveal what looked like luminescent blue paint. Your hand, please, Dora requested of Emmett. What is this? He asked, hesitant. A truth-binding ritual, Era explained. What we are about to share cannot leave this circle. The binding ensures mutual protection. It's not harmful, Dora assured him. It creates a quantum entanglement between participants that makes it physically impossible to share bound information with outsiders. It sounded like magic, but Emmett had learned enough about advanced Kaldorian technology to recognize the scientific principles at work. He extended his hand, and Dora painted a complex symbol on his palm with the luminescent substance. She repeated the process with each handmaiden and finally with Era herself. Speak the words, Dora instructed. I bind myself to this truth and these keepers. After everyone had spoken the ritual words, the symbols glowed brightly for a moment, before fading to faint outlines on their skin. Emmett felt a strange tingling sensation, like static electricity, but somehow moving through his thoughts rather than his nerves. It is done, Dora confirmed. We may speak freely. Era rose from her formal seat and moved to a hidden panel in the wall. Pressing her palm against it, she revealed a concealed compartment, from which she withdrew a small crystalline object about the size of a human heart. It pulsed with inner light colors, shifting from blue to purple to red in hypnotic patterns. This, Era said, holding the object reverently, is the heart of Caloria, one of the last relics of our original homeworld, brought to this planet when our ancestors fled the destruction of their star system. Emmett stared at the object, mesmerized by its pulsing light. What does it do? Many things, Lena answered. It's a repository of ancient knowledge, a power source beyond our current understanding, and a biological catalyst, Era finished. It facilitates genetic compatibility between species that would otherwise be incompatible. The implications slowly dawned on Emmett. You mean for reproduction? Era nodded. Among other biological processes. The heart allows for successful hybridization between Kaldorians and other sentient species. It was how our ancestors survived as a species when they arrived here, with too few numbers for genetic diversity. The indigenous people of this planet were genetically distinct from Kaldorians, Mira explained. The heart made integration possible, preventing extinction through inbreeding. But that was thousands of years ago, Tara added. Now the heart is primarily ceremonial, used in high unions to bless offspring. Era placed the heart carefully on the ritual altar. Primarily ceremonial, yes, but not entirely. The heart still functions and its full capabilities remain largely unexplored. What we do know is that whoever controls the heart could potentially control Kaldorian genetic destiny, facilitating or preventing compatible unions with other species. Which is why Norland wants it, Emmett realized. Controlling interspecies reproduction would give him enormous power in an era of expanding interplanetary relations. Precisely, Era confirmed. House Era has been custodian of the heart for generations, ensuring it is used ethically and rarely. Norland would weaponize it, determining which bloodlines continue and which do not. Emmett looked at the artifact with new understanding. And my championship claim complicates things because you are human, Ellen said, speaking up for the first time. The first non-Kaldorian to claim championship of a house that guards the heart. It creates unprecedented questions of access and authority. Norland will argue before the Council that a non-Kaldorian cannot be trusted with proximity to our most sacred artifact, Mira added. He will present himself as the traditional alternative, a pure Kaldorian of high status, who will protect our heritage. The political dimensions were becoming clearer. What happens if the Council invalidates my championship? Emmett asked. House Era would be vulnerable, Era admitted. Without a recognized champion, we would be pressured to accept alliance with another house. Norland would be the most likely candidate given his power and previous interest. And once he had access to the heart through marriage alliance, Emmett didn't need to finish the thought. He would eventually find a way to claim it entirely, Tara concluded grimly, and then use it to consolidate power by controlling compatible unions. Emmett studied the artifact, its colors still shifting in mesmerizing patterns. We need to ensure the Council validates my championship then. At least until we can figure out a more permanent solution that keeps the heart out of Norland's hands. Agreed, Era said. But Council proceedings are heavily influenced by tradition and precedent. Lena and Mira have been researching relevant historical cases, but there is little to guide us. Your situation is unprecedented. Then, perhaps, Emmett suggested, we need to make a stronger case that I am committed to Kaldorian traditions, to demonstrate that I take the championship and its responsibilities seriously. Era regarded him with new interest. What do you propose? Emmett took a deep breath. The ritual of union you mentioned earlier. If we completed it before the Council session, would that strengthen my claim? The handmaidens exchanged surprised glances. Era's expression remained carefully composed, but Emmett detected a flicker of something in her eyes, respect perhaps. It would, she acknowledged. A completed union would be more difficult for the Council to invalidate. However, she hesitated. The ritual of union is not merely ceremonial. It creates a biological and spiritual bond between participants. Through the heart. Emmett guessed, looking at the pulsing crystal. Era nodded. The ritual involves all members of the household. It would bind you not only to me, but to my handmaidens as well. Such bonds are permanent. The implications were enormous. Emmett would be essentially marrying not just Era, but all 6 women, creating bonds that couldn't be broken. He looked around the room, studying each face, trying to gauge their reactions to the possibility. I need to know, he said carefully, is this something all of you would consent to? Truly consent to not just accept out of duty or tradition? The question hung in the air for a long moment. Finally, Dora spoke. The ritual requires genuine consent to function properly. The heart responds to emotional truth, not just physical presence. That doesn't answer my question, Emmett pressed. How do each of you feel about this possibility? Era studied him, a new respect evident in her expression. Your concern for our free choice honors you, Emmett. She looked to her handmaidens. Each may speak her truth without fear. One by one, the handmaidens expressed their thoughts. Tara spoke of duty and honor, but also of growing respect for Emmett's character. Lena approached the question analytically, noting the practical benefits of the union, while admitting curiosity about human Kaldorian partnership. Mira acknowledged the diplomatic advantages, while expressing cautious optimism about Emmett's character. Dora spoke of the ritual's significance and her belief in its power to create meaningful bonds. Ellen, the youngest, spoke last, and most directly admitting her initial fear had given way to genuine interest in Emmett, as both champion and person. Finally, Era herself addressed the question. I have led House Era for 15 years. In that time, many have sought alliance, but always for what my house could provide them status artifacts' political advantage. Her gaze met Emmett's directly. You alone have asked not what you might gain, but whether we truly consent. That more than any combat prowess convinces me you may be worthy of championship. Emmett felt the weight of responsibility settling on his shoulders. If we do this, if we complete the ritual of union, I promise to protect all of you and the heart for as long as I'm able. Not as conqueror or owner, but as true partner. Era's expression softened. Then, let us prepare. The ritual must be performed at dawn before the council convenes. She looked to Dora. Begin the preparations. We have much to do before morning. What followed was a flurry of activity. Dora directed the preparation of a ritual chamber, deep within House Era's private quarters, a circular room with a pool at its center, and crystalline formations embedded in the walls. Lena provided Emmett with texts, explaining the ritual's significance and what would be expected of him. Mira coached him on the formal phrases he would need to speak. Tara secured the perimeter, ensuring their preparations would not be discovered by Norland's spies. Ellen assisted everyone, seeming to be everywhere at once with exactly what was needed before it was even requested. Era herself spent time in meditation with the heart, communing with it in some way Emmett couldn't understand. When she emerged, she seemed both more serene and more focused than before. As dawn approached, Emmett found himself standing at the edge of the ritual pool, dressed in a simple, white garment. The water glowed faintly blue from light sources beneath its surface. Around the pool, Era and her handmaidens also wore white, their silver-blue skin luminescent in the soft light. The ritual of union is ancient, Dora explained, her voice taking on a formal quality. It predates our arrival on this world. Through it, compatible souls are bound in mutual protection and shared destiny. Era stepped forward, the heart of Caloria cradled in her hands. It pulsed more rapidly now, as if sensing the ritual's commencement. Emmett Dunn of Earth. Era intoned, Do you freely choose to bind yourself to House Era, to share in our joys and sorrows, to protect, and be protected, to honor our traditions, while bringing your own strength to our union? I do, Emmett replied, the formal phrase coming naturally despite his nervousness. And do you, handmaidens of House Era, freely choose to accept Emmett Dunn as champion and consort, to share in his joys and sorrows, to protect and be protected, to honor his strengths, while supporting him in weakness? One by one, the handmaidens responded, I do. Era finally addressed herself. And I, Era of House Era, freely choose to bind myself to Emmett Dunn, to share in his joys and sorrows, to lead alongside him, to honor his differences, while celebrating our common purpose. She placed the heart at the center of the pool, where it floated just beneath the surface, its pulsing light intensifying. Enter the waters of binding, she instructed. Emmett stepped into the pool, the water warm against his skin. Hera and her handmaidens did the same, forming a circle around the floating heart. Following Dora's earlier instructions, Emmett extended his hands palm up. The women placed their hands over his, creating a layered connection. With water as witness and the heart as catalyst, Dora spoke, "Let what is separate become connected. Let what is divided become whole." The heart's pulsing accelerated, its light growing brighter, until it illuminated the entire chamber. Emmett felt a tingling sensation beginning in his hands and spreading throughout his body, not uncomfortable, but intensely present. The water around them began to swirl gently, creating currents that seemed to flow through their connected bodies, rather than around them. And then suddenly, Emmett could feel them, not physically but mentally. Flashes of emotion, fragments of memory, echoes of thought patterns not his own. Tara's disciplined mind organized like a tactical grid. Lena's analytical processes, constantly cataloging and cross-referencing. Mira's diplomatic instincts, reading subtle cues and calculating responses. Dora's spiritual awareness, attuned to energies beyond ordinary perception. Ellen's youthful curiosity and quick adaptability. And Hera, her burden of leadership, her careful balance of tradition and progress, her genuine care for her handmaidens, and now her cautious hope for what this union might bring. From their reactions, widened eyes, quickened breath expressions of wonder, Emmett understood they were experiencing something similar from him. His memories of Earth, his training as a pilot, his sense of duty to his mission, and his growing commitment to their protection. The connection deepened, becoming more than just glimpses and impressions, a true sharing of consciousness. Not complete merger, but a bridge between separate minds that would remain even after the ritual concluded. At the height of the connection, the heart rose from the water, hovering above their joined hands. It pulsed one final time with blinding intensity, and Emmett felt something fundamental shift within him, as if his very cells were being subtly reconfigured. Not changing what he was, but expanding what he could be. Then, the light subsided, and the heart gently lowered back into Hera's waiting hands. The mental connection receded to a background awareness, still present, but no longer overwhelming. "It is done," Dora announced quietly. "The union is complete." Emmett looked around at the 6 women, seeing them with new eyes. Not just allies of convenience or legal connections, but genuine partners, bound by something both biological and spiritual. He could feel their presence in his mind, distinct signatures of consciousness that he suspected would become more familiar with time. "I can feel all of you," Ellen whispered, wonder in her voice. "Even when I close my eyes, I know exactly where each of you is." "The bond manifests differently for each union," Dora explained. "For us, it appears to include spatial awareness and emotional resonance." Hera stepped from the pool, carefully placing the heart in its crystalline container. "The council convenes in 2 hours. We should prepare." As they left the ritual chamber, Emmett noticed subtle changes in how they moved together, more coordinated, more aware of each other's positions. The physical proximity that had felt awkward before now seemed natural, even comfortable. In the preparation chamber, Lena presented Emmett with formal attire, befitting his new status, a champion's ceremonial armor, modified for human physiology, emblazoned with House Hera's crest. "The council will expect traditional presentation," Lena explained. "Your appearance in full ceremonial attire will reinforce the legitimacy of your position." As Emmett dressed, he became aware of a new sense of purpose. The ritual had done more than create a legal union. It had given him a true stake in the outcome of today's council session. These women were now genuinely his responsibility, not through conquest, but through mutual choice. When they were all prepared, Hera gathered them for a final word before departing for the council chamber. "Whatever happens today, remember that the bond we have formed transcends legal recognition. The heart has accepted our union. No council can unmake what has been made." Tara Ever, the security specialist, provided a tactical assessment. "Norland will have allies in the chamber. He may attempt to create a disruption if the proceedings don't go his way." Then we remain vigilant, Emmett said, surprised by how natural it felt to step into the role of protector. And we present a united front. Norland may have political influence, but we have something stronger. And what is that? Mira asked, though her slight smile suggested she already knew the answer. Truth, Emmett replied. We chose this union freely. The heart responded to that truth. We need only ensure the council recognizes what has already been established. The journey to the council chamber felt like a ceremonial procession. Tara and Mira led the way, creating a formal escort. Lena and Dora flanked Era, with Emmett slightly behind her right shoulder, the traditional position for a champion. Ellen brought up the rear, carrying ceremonial items that would be presented to the council. As they traversed the corridors of the fortress, Kaldorians stopped to observe their passage. Emmett could hear the whispers, speculation about the human champion, curiosity about the ritual rumors that had already begun to circulate, uncertainty about what the council would decide. The council chamber itself was imposing, a vast circular room with tiered seating surrounding a central floor. 7 elder Kaldorians occupied the highest tier, distinguished by elaborate facial markings and ceremonial attire that indicated their high status. Below them sat representatives from various noble houses, military castes, and civic institutions. Prefect Norland was already present, positioned prominently among the military representatives. His eyes narrowed as House Era's procession entered his gaze, fixing particularly on Emmett in the champion's armor. The chief counselor, an elderly Kaldorian with intricate silver markings covering most of his visible skin, raised a ceremonial staff. The council recognizes House Era and attendants. Step forward and state your purpose. Era moved to the center of the floor, her posture regal. House Era comes before the council to affirm the valid championship of Emmett Dunn, established through honorable combat and sealed through ritual union. Murmurs spread through the assembly at the mention of ritual union. Even Norland appeared momentarily surprised, though he quickly masked his reaction. This council convened specifically to examine the validity of a non-Kaldorian claiming championship through the challenge of honor, the chief counselor stated. You claim the matter has been settled through ritual union. I do, Era confirmed. At dawn this day, the ritual of union was completed between myself, my handmaidens, and Champion Dunn. The heart of Caloria has recognized and blessed our bond. This announcement caused an eruption of whispers and exclamations. The counselors conferred among themselves, clearly not having anticipated this development. Norland rose from his seat. Counselors, I must object. The ritual of union requires preparation and witnesses. This hasty ceremony conducted in secret cannot be validated without proper examination. The chief counselor looked to Era. Prefect Norland raises a valid concern. The ritual traditionally requires witnesses outside the participating parties. The ritual requires the heart as witness, nothing more. Dora stepped forward, speaking in her capacity as ritual specialist. I have overseen 17 unions in my service to noble houses. The heart's response is the only validation needed, and it responded with full acceptance. Convenient that we have only your word for this, Norland countered. You question the word of a certified ritual specialist, one of the counselors asked, clearly offended by the implication. I question the timing, Norland pressed. This union was clearly rushed to preempt council deliberation. The union was completed according to all traditional requirements, Era stated firmly. If the council requires evidence, we submit to examination by the council's own ritual specialists. This offer silenced Norland temporarily. Examination by council specialists would involve connection to truth-binding artifacts that would reveal whether the ritual had truly been completed successfully. The chief counselor considered for a moment before nodding. Council Specialist Vorin will conduct the examination. An elderly Kaldorian descended from the council tier, carrying a smaller artifact that resembled a fragment of the heart of Caloria. He approached Era, first placing the artifact against her forehead. It glowed with the same shifting colors as the heart, pulsing in a steady rhythm. "The union is verified in this one," Specialist Vorin announced. He proceeded to test each of the handmaidens with the same result. Finally, he approached Emmett, his gaze curious. "A human champion. Unprecedented." He placed the artifact against Emmett's forehead. The sensation was similar to the ritual itself, a mental connection, though less intense. Emmett could feel the artifact scanning the newly formed bonds in his mind, verifying their authenticity. After a moment, Specialist Vorin stepped back looking surprised. "The union is not only valid but unusually strong. The heart has created deep neural pathways between all participants." He turned to address the council. "I have overseen examinations for 57 years. This union, though, between different species, shows greater connectivity than many traditional Kaldorian bonds." Norland's expression darkened. "This changes nothing about the fundamental issue. A human should not have access to our most sacred artifacts and traditions. The challenge of honor was never meant to apply to off-worlders." "Yet our laws make no such distinction," Lena countered, stepping forward with an ancient scroll. "I have reviewed the original Codex of Honor, dating to the Second Era. It states clearly, any being capable of reason and honor may issue or accept challenge, and by victory claim the rights thereof." The council murmured again, considering this evidence. The chief counselor addressed Emmett directly for the first time. "Humans, step forward and speak your intent. Why do you claim championship of House Era?" Emmett moved to stand beside Era, conscious of the hundreds of eyes, watching his every move. "I claim championship not through desire for power or status, but through the calling of duty and honor. The challenge was issued and I fought with respect for your traditions. Now, through the ritual of union, I am bound to House Era, not just by law, but by choice and commitment." He placed his hand over his heart, a gesture that felt right, despite not knowing if it carried the same symbolic weight for Kaldorians. "I pledge to protect House Era, to honor Kaldorian traditions and to serve as a bridge between our peoples." The chief counselor studied him before turning to the assembled council. "We have heard testimony and examined evidence. The challenge was valid by ancient law. The union has been verified by council examination. By tradition and precedent, we must recognize Emmett Dunn as rightful champion of House Era." Norland surged to his feet. "This is an outrage a human cannot—" "The council has ruled, Prefect," the chief counselor cut him off. "Your objection is noted but overruled." Emmett felt a wave of relief flood through him, amplified by the emotional resonance of his newfound bonds. Through their connection, he could sense similar relief from Era and her handmaidens, but also caution. This victory, while significant, would not end Norland's pursuit of the heart. As if confirming this thought, Norland's expression shifted from outrage to cold calculation. He offered a stiff bow to the council before departing the chamber without another word, a silence that felt more threatening than any protest. The formal proceedings concluded with ceremonial acknowledgments. As House Era's procession left the council chamber, Emmett leaned close to Era. "Norland's not finished," he murmured. "No," she agreed quietly. "This victory gives us legal standing, but it will only intensify his desire for the heart. We must be vigilant." Tara, walking ahead, spoke without turning. "I'm doubling security protocols. Norland will likely attempt something before your scheduled departure, Captain." Emmett had nearly forgotten his original mission amid the whirlwind of events. He was due to depart Caloria in 3 days, after the Festival of Alignment concluded. The mission parameters now seemed hopelessly inadequate for the situation he found himself in. As they returned to House Era's quarters, Mira addressed the practical concerns. "We must decide how to proceed. Captain Dunn's mission requires his return to Earth, yet the Union bond functions best with proximity. Extended separation could strain the connection. Not to mention leaving us vulnerable to Norland's next move," Tara added. Lena, ever practical, suggested a compromise. The trade negotiations were the primary purpose of Captain Dunn's mission. Now that he holds status as a noble champion, those negotiations could be expedited. Perhaps arrangement could be made for a diplomatic vessel to remain in orbit, allowing for regular contact, while maintaining the connection between Earth and Coloria. Era considered this suggestion. A diplomatic solution may indeed be possible, but first we must survive the Festival of Alignment. Norland will not accept this defeat easily. Her prediction proved accurate, sooner than any of them expected. As they prepared for the first ceremonial function of the festival that evening, an urgent message arrived from one of House Era's informants in the city. Norland has mobilized his personal guard, Terra reported reading the encrypted message. Not officially, they're out of uniform, but our source recognized several key lieutenants entering the lower city with weapons. The first ceremony takes place in the Grand Plaza, Mira noted with concern. A public space difficult to secure. Could we request additional security from the council? Emmett asked. Era shook her head. Not without evidence of specific threat. And Norland is too clever to leave such evidence. Then we adapt, Emmett decided. Terra, what assets do we have for personal protection? The security specialist led them to a concealed armory within House Era's quarters. Standard ceremonial weapons plus emergency defensive gear. She activated a panel that revealed an impressive array of both traditional and advanced weaponry. We maintain the appearance of normal ceremonial attendants. Emmett suggested, but each of us goes armed and prepared for trouble. They agreed on a strategy. Emmett and Terra would remain closest to Era as primary protectors. Lena and Mira would monitor the crowd for signs of Norland's agents. Dora would keep the ceremonial rituals moving efficiently to minimize their time in the vulnerable public space. Ellen would stay at the fortress to secure the heart of Coloria, a duty she initially protested, but accepted when the others pointed out her crucial role as last line of defense. The Grand Plaza was spectacular when they arrived, illuminated by thousands of floating lights that mimicked the alignment of Coloria's three moons. Caldorians from all castes had gathered for the celebration, their varied attire creating a tapestry of color and texture. Under normal circumstances, Emmett would have been fascinated by the cultural display. Instead, his attention was divided between the ceremonial requirements and constant vigilance for potential threats. Through their bond, he could sense his companion's awareness, Terra's tactical assessment of every individual who approached Mira's diplomatic radar for political undercurrents, Lena's cataloging of notable attendees, and Dora's focus on the ceremonial timing. Even Era, while maintaining her public persona of serene nobility, was internally alert and ready. The first sign of trouble came during the moon-calling ceremony. As Era stepped forward to recite the traditional invocation, Emmett noticed a subtle shift in the crowd's formation, three individuals moving with too much coordination closing in from different directions. 3 targets, he murmured to Terra, who nodded almost imperceptibly. Identified, she replied. On my signal, move Era to the ceremonial altar. Higher ground, better defensive position. Emmett relayed the plan to Era through their mental connection, a communication method that still felt strange, but was proving invaluable. Era gave no outward sign of having received the message, continuing her recitation flawlessly, but Emmett could sense her acknowledgement. As Era reached the climax of the invocation, Terra gave the signal, a slight hand gesture that could have been mistaken for a ceremonial movement. Emmett smoothly guided Era toward the raised altar, while Terra intercepted the first of the approaching threats. The attacker's surprise at being identified gave Terra the advantage. She disabled him with a precise strike that looked to casual observers like a ceremonial greeting gone slightly awry. The would-be assassin crumpled the concealed weapon in his sleeve, clattering to the ground. The other 2 attackers, seeing their companion neutralized, hesitated long enough for Lena to alert festival security with a prearranged signal. Within moments, council guards converged on the area, forcing the remaining assailants to abandon their approach. The ceremony continued without further incident, but the attempted attack confirmed their fears. Norland was willing to act outside official channels to achieve his goals. When they returned to the fortress that night, a council messenger awaited them with disturbing news. Prefect Norland has filed formal charges against House Era, the messenger reported. He claims illegal activation of ancient technology and requests immediate sequestration of all artifacts under council protection. Era dismissed the messenger before addressing her household. This is his next move, using legal mechanisms to gain access to the heart. The council ruled in our favor just hours ago, Emmett noted. Why would they reverse position now? Different jurisdiction, Lena explained. The championship ruling fell under traditional law. Artifact regulation comes under security protocols where Norland has greater authority. How quickly could this move forward? Emmett asked. The council won't convene again until after the festival, Mira said. 3 days. But Norland could potentially secure an emergency injunction for temporary sequestration, which would give him access to the Heart Era, concluded grimly. Then we need to remove the temptation, Emmett decided. The heart needs to be somewhere Norland can't reach it, at least until his legal maneuvers can be properly countered. Where would be safe? Dora asked. The heart has never left House Era's protection. Emmett thought for a moment. My ship, the Artemis. It's in orbit awaiting my return. Norland's authority doesn't extend beyond planetary atmosphere. Era considered the suggestion. Moving the heart off planet. It has never been done. But these are unprecedented circumstances. She looked to Dora. Would the heart be damaged by space travel? Not physically, Dora replied. Its crystalline structure is remarkably resilient. But separation from Kaldorian soil for extended periods is uncharted territory. We're not talking about permanent removal, Emmett clarified. Just temporary safekeeping until Norland's legal challenge can be properly addressed. After further discussion, they agreed on a plan. Emmett would contact his ship and arrange for pickup at a remote location away from the capital. Tara, Lena, and Mira would accompany him to transport the heart, while Era, Dora, and Ellen would maintain appearances at the festival to avoid suspicion. The plan was set in motion immediately. Using secure channels, Emmett contacted Commander Walsh aboard the Artemis, providing a heavily edited version of events that emphasized diplomatic necessity without revealing the heart's true significance. Understood, Captain. Walsh responded after considering the request. We'll arrange pickup at the coordinates you've provided, but I expect a full debriefing once you're aboard. With the extraction arranged for the following night, they turned their attention to the heart's transportation. Dora created a specialized container that would maintain the artifact's energetic stability during transit. Tara planned the security details of their journey to the rendezvous point, while Lena researched legal precedents that could counter Norland's charges upon their return. The second day of the festival proceeded without obvious incident, though all of them remained alert for further attempts by Norland's agents. Era performed her ceremonial duties flawlessly, giving no indication of the pending operation. As night fell, they enacted their plan. Emmett, Taralina, and Mira prepared to transport the heart, while Era, Dora, and Ellen maintained their public presence at the evening's ceremonial events. Take this, Era said, pressing a small crystalline device into Emmett's hand before they parted. It's keyed to my genetic signature. If you encounter difficulties, it will prove your authority as my champion. We'll return by dawn, Emmett promised. Maintain regular appearances and give us time to secure the heart aboard the Artemis. The small group moved through the less traveled corridors of the Fortress Terra, leading the way through passages that didn't appear on standard maps. The heart, now secured in Dora's specialized container, pulsed with subdued light in Emmett's hands. Even through the containment field, he could feel its energy resonating with the bond they had formed. Approaching the east gate, Tara murmured, pausing at a junction to scan for guards. 2 sentries standard rotation. Expected, Emmett asked. Yes, they're House Era loyalists, Lena confirmed. They'll let us pass without question. As predicted, the guards acknowledged them with respectful nods, asking no questions when Tara gave them a predetermined signal. Beyond the gate, a covered transport waited in the shadows, nondescript and unlikely to draw attention. I'll drive, Tara said, taking position at the controls. Lena monitoring systems. Mira diplomatic credentials ready if we're stopped. Captain secure the heart. The journey through the capital's outskirts proceeded smoothly at first. The night streets were relatively empty, with most citizens attending festival events in the central districts. They had nearly reached the city boundary when flashing lights appeared behind them. Security patrol, Tara reported tensely. Not standard festival deployment. Norland, Emmett questioned. Likely, Mira confirmed, studying the approaching vehicle. The insignia matches planetary defense, not city security. Options, Emmett asked, cradling the heart's container protectively. Tara accelerated slightly. Outrunning them would confirm suspicion. Better to face them with our credentials in order. The patrol vehicle signaled for them to stop. Tara complied, bringing their transport to a smooth halt at the side of the road. Diplomatic papers ready, Mira murmured, preparing the documentation that technically allowed Emmett freedom of movement as a Terran representative. Two Kaldorian security officers approached, their expressions stern beneath their official headgear. The senior officer addressed them through the open window. Identification and purpose traveling after curfew. There is no festival curfew, Lena pointed out calmly. Special security protocol authorized by Prefect Norland, the officer countered. All vehicles must be cleared. Mira presented their credentials. Diplomatic escort. Captain Dunn is returning to his ship for scheduled communications with Earth authorities. The officer examined the documents with suspicious thoroughness. These appear in order, but new regulations require inspection of all cargo leaving the capital during the festival. Emmett felt the tension rise among his companions. A search would reveal the heart immediately. That won't be necessary, he said firmly, producing the crystalline device Era had given him. House Era Authorization Diplomatic Seal. The officer hesitated, studying the device. This grants passage, but regulations still require. Your regulations do not supersede noble house authority during ceremonial periods. Mira interrupted her diplomatic training, evident in her confident tone. Council Code 739 clearly establishes precedent. The reference to specific council code momentarily confused the officer, who looked to his partner uncertainly. In that moment of hesitation, a new voice entered the conversation. Let them pass. The officers turned in surprise. A senior Kaldorian in formal military attire approached from a second vehicle that had arrived silently behind the first. Commander Varek, the first officer acknowledged with obvious respect. Varek nodded curtly. House Era moves with council blessing tonight. Security protocols are suspended for this transport only. He turned to Emmett with an evaluating gaze. Isn't that correct, Champion Dunn? Emmett maintained a neutral expression, uncertain whether this unexpected intervention was ally or threat. Through the bond, he could sense Tara's heightened alertness and Mira's diplomatic assessment running through possibilities. That is correct, Commander, Emmett confirmed, matching the Kaldorian's formal tone. Varek turned back to the officers. Return to your patrol route. I will personally escort the transport to the boundary. Once the first vehicle had departed, Varek approached Emmett's window. Lady Era suspected Norland would establish checkpoints. I serve on the Security Council and received her message just in time. You're loyal to House Era, Emmett questioned cautiously. A slight smile crossed Varek's features. My sister served as handmaiden to Lady Era's mother. House loyalties run deep on Caloria. He glanced at the container Emmett protected. That must reach safety. Norland has deployed his personal guard throughout the capital, searching for unauthorized movements. We appreciate your assistance, Mira said diplomatically. Follow my vehicle, Varek instructed. I can clear the way to the eastern boundary. Beyond that, you're on your own until you reach your extraction point. With Varek's escort, they passed 2 more checkpoints without incident. At the boundary, the commander offered a parting warning. Norland has eyes beyond the capital. Move quickly and stay off main transit routes. And Captain. He fixed Emmett with an intense gaze. What you carry is more important to our people than you know. Guard it well. After Varek departed, They continued toward the rendezvous coordinates, now traveling through the less populated rural regions surrounding the capital. The terrain grew increasingly rugged with dense forests and steep inclines that challenged their vehicles' capabilities. "We're being followed," Tara announced suddenly, checking the monitoring systems. "Two vehicles keeping distance but maintaining pursuit." "Norland's forces?" Emmett asked. "No. Signature matches planetary defense auxiliary units." Lena confirmed, studying the data. "Non-official but equipped with standard tech." "They're waiting for us to reach a more isolated location," Tara assessed grimly. "Easier to intercept without witnesses." "Time to extraction point?" Emmett asked. 30 minutes at current speed, Lena calculated. "The Artemis should be positioning for atmosphere entry now." "Can we increase speed?" Emmett asked. Tara shook her head. "Not on this terrain without risking damage to the vehicle and what we're carrying." Emmett felt the heart pulse more intensely in its container, as if responding to the danger. An idea formed. "The bond we share, can we use it somehow? The heart responds to our connection." Lena and Mira exchanged thoughtful glances. "The ritual established neural pathways," Lena said slowly. "In theory, focusing our collective awareness could enhance certain abilities." "Like what?" Emmett pressed. "Perception, mainly," Mira explained. "Kaldorian legends speak of bonded groups achieving expanded awareness during crisis." "Worth trying," Emmett decided. "Focus on our connection while maintaining normal operations." While Tara continued driving, they each concentrated on the bond between them. Emmett placed his hand on the heart's container, feeling its rhythmic pulse synchronize with his heartbeat. Gradually, he became aware of an expanding sense of perception, not just his companion's presence in his mind, but a growing awareness of the surrounding terrain. "There," he said suddenly, pointing to a nearly invisible side path. "Alternative route." Tara didn't question the instructions, smoothly turning the vehicle onto the concealed path. "How did you know this was here?" "I'm not sure," Emmett admitted. "I just saw it." "The heart," Lena whispered. "It's enhancing our connection to Caloria itself. The original population had geospatial abilities beyond normal perception." The new path took them through a densely wooded area, the canopy overhead providing cover from aerial observation. Their pursuers, committed to the main route, continued past the hidden turnoff. "We've bought some time," Tara noted, "but they'll realize their error soon enough." The path eventually emerged into a small clearing, tucked between steep cliff faces, a natural landing zone shielded from most scanning technology by the mineral composition of the surrounding rocks. "Perfect extraction point," Emmett noted, somehow knowing this despite never having seen the location before. Tara, defensive perimeter. Lena, signal the Artemis with adjusted coordinates. Mira, help me prepare the heart for transport. Each moved with practiced efficiency, their actions coordinated, with minimal verbal communication. Through their bond, Emmett could sense Eridora and Elen attending the ceremonial proceedings, back in the capital, maintaining appearances while remaining aware of their companion's progress. The first sign of the Artemis was a subtle disturbance in the air above the clearing, followed by the distinctive hum of descent thrusters. The Terran ship, sleek and angular compared to Kaldorian designs, materialized through the atmospheric haze, landing lights illuminating the clearing as it descended. "Right on time," Emmett noted with relief. As the ship settled onto the clearing floor, its entry ramp extended. Commander Walsh himself appeared at the top, accompanied by 2 security officers. "Captain Dunn," Walsh called out, his expression reflecting both relief and confusion at the scene before him. "We received your coordinates change. Status report." Situation stable but urgent," Emmett replied, moving toward the ramp with the heart's container. "We need immediate departure. 3 Kaldorian officials accompanying me under diplomatic protocol." Walsh's gaze lingered on Tara, Lena, and Mira with obvious surprise, but years of military discipline kept his questions in check. "Understood. We're cleared for immediate atmospheric exit. Board now." They had just reached the ramp when the sound of approaching vehicles disrupted the clearing silence. 3 armored transports burst through the tree line, each bearing the insignia of planetary defense. Armed Kaldorians emerged, weapons raised. Prefect Norland orders you to surrender the artifact, and the Terran captain, the lead officer, announced through an amplification system. Resistance will be met with appropriate force. Get aboard, Emmett instructed his companions, passing the heart's container to Lena. Secure this in my quarters. What are you going to do? Mira asked, concern evident in her voice and through their bond. Buy us time, Emmett replied, turning to face the Kaldorian forces, while the others boarded. Commander Walsh, prepare for emergency departure on my signal. Walsh hesitated only briefly before nodding. 2 minutes, Captain. Then we lift with or without you. As the ramp began to close, leaving just enough space for a last-second entry, Emmett stepped forward to address the Kaldorian forces. He raised Era's crystalline device, which glowed with increased intensity in proximity to the heart. I am Emmett Dunn, recognized champion of House Era, by Council, ruling. He announced, his voice carrying across the clearing. I act with full authority of Lady Era in protection of House artifacts. Your actions violate Council protocol during ceremonial period. The officers faltered clearly, uncertain about confronting a officially recognized noble champion. Taking advantage of their hesitation, Emmett continued. I invoke right of champion's challenge. Where is Prefect Norland? Let him face me directly, rather than sending proxies. This traditional challenge created further confusion among the Kaldorian forces. By law, such a challenge could not be refused without loss of honor, yet Norland was not present to accept or decline. As the officers conferred among themselves, Emmett sensed a new presence approaching a sleek craft, descending rapidly into the clearing. Unlike the military vehicles, this bore the distinctive markings of high Kaldorian nobility. The craft landed, and the entry portal opened to reveal Prefect Norland himself, dressed in ceremonial combat attire. His expression reflected cold fury as he strode toward Emmett. A champion's challenge. How predictably primitive, Norland sneered. Did you think I wouldn't anticipate this pathetic maneuver? Not anticipate, Emmett corrected. Count on. You're predictable, Prefect. Your obsession with the heart makes you transparent. Norland's eyes narrowed. Where is it? Where have you hidden the heart? Safe, Emmett replied. Beyond your reach unless you consent to terms. You dare dictate terms to me? Norland's hand moved to the ceremonial blade at his side. I am Prefect of Planetary Defense. And I am Champion of House Era, Emmett countered. Recognized by Council ruling and ritual bond. My challenge stands. Face me honorably, or forfeit all claims against House Era permanently. Norland studied him with calculating hatred. Very well. A champion's challenge it is. He drew his blade, a more elaborate version of the weapon Durak had wielded. When you lie dead, the heart will return to Kaldorian control, as will Lady Era and her household. Emmett drew his own weapon, the same combat knife that had felled Durak, now ceremonially mounted, as badge of his championship. If I fall, the heart remains with the Artemis bound for Earth under diplomatic seal. But when you fall, you will renounce all claims against House Era permanently and publicly. Agreed, Norland snarled, assuming a combat stance. Unlike the duel with Durak, this confrontation offered no formal arena or ceremonial commencement. Norland attacked immediately, his blade slicing through the air with practiced precision. Emmett dodged, noting that while Norland lacked Durak's raw power, he possessed a deadly technical proficiency. You fight well for a human, Norland acknowledged after several exchanges, left both combatants unscathed. But you face a warrior with 60 years of training. Experience isn't everything, Emmett replied, maintaining a defensive posture while studying Norland's patterns. Through the bond, he could sense his companions aboard the Artemis, their collective awareness extending his perception, allowing him to anticipate movements a fraction before they occurred. The duel continued, each fighter testing the other's defenses. Norland grew increasingly frustrated as Emmett evaded attacks that should have landed his human reflexes, seemingly enhanced beyond normal capability. "What trickery is this?" Norland demanded after a particularly close exchange. "No human moves with such awareness." "Not trickery," Emmett corrected, pressing forward with his first offensive series. "Connection. Something you could never understand about the heart. It's not a weapon to be controlled, but a bond to be shared." This concept clearly disturbed Norland, who redoubled his attacks with increased aggression but diminished precision. Emmett continued his measured defense, waiting for the perfect opening. It came after Norland committed to an overextended thrust. Emmett sidestepped, and rather than striking a killing blow, as he had with Dirac, executed a precise cut that severed Norland's sword hand at the wrist. The prefect staggered back in shock, blue blood spurting from the wound. His guards moved forward, but Emmett's voice stopped them. "The challenge is decided," he announced formally. "By traditional law, Prefect Norland lives, but is bound by the terms of his defeat." Clutching his injured arm, Norland glared at Emmett with undisguised hatred. "You think this ends here? The Council will never accept this outcome." "They will when they review the recording," Emmett replied, gesturing to the small drone that had deployed from the Artemis during the confrontation. "Every word, every agreement documented for official review." Defeated, but defiant, Norland addressed his guards. "Return me to the capital, and prepare my medical team." To Emmett, he added with quiet venom, "This isn't overhuman. Some victories are temporary." "Perhaps," Emmett acknowledged, "but some bonds are permanent." As Norland was escorted to his craft, Emmett backed toward the Artemis, maintaining vigilance until the ramp closed behind him. Within moments, the ship's engines engaged, propelling them rapidly through Caloria's atmosphere toward the safety of orbit. In the ship's medical bay, Emmett received treatment for minor injuries sustained during the duel. Commander Walsh stood nearby, his expression a mixture of confusion and grudging respect. "I think you owe me an explanation, Captain," Walsh said once the medical droid had finished its work. "3 alien women, a mysterious artifact, and a duel with a planetary prefect weren't in your mission parameters." "It's complicated, sir," Emmett began, then paused as he sensed distress through the bond. "Something's wrong. Where are my companions?" "Your companions are in the diplomatic quarters under guard," Walsh replied. "Standard protocol for unplanned alien passengers. The artifact is secured in the science lab for analysis." Alarm surged through Emmett. "The heart can't be separated from us for long. It needs to be returned immediately." Walsh's expression hardened. "That heart is potentially valuable technology, Captain. Terran Command will want a full evaluation before—" "With respect, sir," Emmett interrupted, standing to face his commanding officer. "That artifact is the legal property of House Era. I am bound by Kaldorian law and ritual to protect it. Attempting to claim it would constitute a serious diplomatic incident." "You seem to have forgotten where your loyalties lie, Dunn," Walsh said coldly. "Your mission was to secure favorable trade terms, not to get entangled in alien politics." "My mission was to maintain positive diplomatic relations," Emmett corrected. "And right now, those relations depend on respecting Kaldorian cultural property." Their standoff was interrupted by the ship's security alert. "Commander, unauthorized access detected in Science Lab 3, a voice announced over the communication system. Walsh's eyes narrowed. "Your alien friends, I presume?" "Sir, you need to understand what you're dealing with," Emmett said urgently. "The heart isn't just technology. It's a biological catalyst that forms connections. The bond between us and it isn't theoretical." Without waiting for permission, Emmett moved toward the door. Walsh stepped in his path. "Stand down, Captain. That's an order." "I can't, sir." For the first time in his military career, Emmett directly disobeyed a superior officer. Too much is at stake. He sidestepped Walsh and moved quickly through the corridors toward Science Lab 3, following the pull of the bond, rather than ship schematics. He found Terra engaged in standoff, with 2 security officers outside the lab entrance. The others, Emmett asked tersely. Inside, Tara replied, never taking her eyes off the Terran officers. The heart was calling to them. We couldn't remain separated. Emmett addressed the security officers. Stand down. I take full responsibility. We have orders, Captain, one officer replied firmly. And I have diplomatic authority that supersedes those orders. Emmett countered, producing Era's crystalline device. This vessel is in Kaldorian space. Their laws apply to cultural artifacts. The officers exchanged uncertain glances before reluctantly stepping aside. Emmett entered the lab to find Lena and Mira standing protectively around the heart's container, which now pulsed with intense, erratic patterns of light. It's destabilizing, Lena explained urgently. Separation from Kaldorian soil combined with proximity to unfamiliar technology is creating energy fluctuations. Emmett stepped forward, placing his hand on the container. Through their bond, he could sense the heart's distress, like a living entity, struggling to maintain equilibrium in an alien environment. It needs to connect with all of us, he realized. The bond stabilizes it. Commander Walsh entered the lab, flanked by additional security. Captain Dunn, you are relieved of duty effective immediately. Security confiscate the artifact and escort our guests to detention. Before anyone could move, the heart's pulsing suddenly intensified, bathing the room in brilliant light. Every electronic system in the lab fluctuated, screens flickering with interference patterns. What's happening? Walsh demanded. The heart is protecting itself, Mira explained, her voice calm, despite the escalating situation. It's a defensive response to perceived threat. Through the bond, Emmett suddenly sensed Eradora and Ellen, despite the planetary distance between them. They were in danger. Norland had returned to the capital and was moving against House Era directly. We need to return to the surface, Emmett announced. Immediately. Lady Era and the others are under attack. Out of the question, Walsh replied. This ship isn't returning to atmosphere without orders from Terran Command. The heart's pulsing synchronized with Emmett's accelerated heartbeat. He felt power flowing through the bond, connecting all 7 of them across space. With sudden clarity, he knew what needed to be done. Lena, prepare the heart for transport, he instructed. Tara, secure our path to the shuttle bay. Mira, diplomatic override codes for the bay doors. To his surprise, his companions moved with instant understanding, requiring no further explanation. The enhanced connection was allowing near telepathic coordination. You're committing mutiny, Captain, Walsh warned, his hand moving to his sidearm. No, sir. Emmett corrected, his voice steady. I'm fulfilling a higher duty. One you'll understand when you receive full briefing from Terran Command about the true importance of Kaldorian relations. This bluff, delivered with absolute conviction, created just enough hesitation in Walsh to allow Emmett and his companions to move past the security team. The heart's energy field seemed to create a momentary disruption in the officers' coordination, leaving them disoriented as the group exited the lab. Their journey to the shuttle bay proceeded with remarkable efficiency, each anticipating the other's needs through their enhanced connection. Security systems mysteriously malfunctioned in their path, allowing unimpeded progress. The heart is interfacing with the ship's systems, Lena observed, as yet another security door opened without prompting. Its adaptive capabilities are beyond anything in our historical records. They reached the shuttle bay to find it already cycling open the small planetary craft prepped for launch. No security personnel were present, an unusual absence that suggested the heart's influence extended throughout the ship's systems. How much control does it have? Emmett wondered aloud as they boarded the shuttle. Not control, Mira corrected. Cooperation. The heart doesn't dominate, it connects. It's finding pathways of least resistance. The shuttle launched smoothly automated systems, responding to Tara's piloting commands with unusual responsiveness. As they descended through Caloria's atmosphere, Emmett felt the bond with Eradora and Ellen strengthening with proximity. There at the ceremonial chambers beneath the fortress, he said, somehow knowing their exact location. Norland has them cornered with his personal guard. His defeat in the challenge should have nullified his authority, Mira noted with concern. Legal authority, yes, Lena confirmed. But a wounded predator is most dangerous when desperate. Terra adjusted their course, bringing the shuttle down in a concealed landing zone near the fortress's ancient subterranean entrance, a location known only to House Era's most trusted members. "How did you know about this access point?" Emmett asked as they disembarked. "I didn't," Terra admitted. "The knowledge simply appeared when needed." "The heart is connecting us to House Era's collective memory," Lena theorized, accessing knowledge across generations of Guardians. They moved swiftly through ancient tunnels beneath the fortress, the heart guiding their path through its pulsing light and the strengthening bond. Emmett could sense Era's determined resistance, Dora's protective rituals, and Ellen's surprisingly fierce defense of their position. The tunnels eventually opened into a vast underground chamber, older than the fortress above, with architectural elements suggesting it predated Kaldorian settlement on the planet. At the chamber's center stood Era Dora and Ellen, surrounded by a shimmering energy field that kept Norland's forces at bay. Norland himself stood at the perimeter, his severed wrist now encased in a regenerative medical device. His expression reflected manic determination as he directed his guards in their attempts to breach the protective field. "The field is weakening," Dora announced, her strength visibly faltering as she maintained the ancient protection ritual. "We cannot hold much longer." "You don't need to," Emmett called out, stepping into the chamber with the heart held before him. The effect was immediate and dramatic. The heart pulsed with renewed intensity, sending a wave of energy throughout the chamber that momentarily immobilized everyone, except those bound through the ritual. "Impossible!" Norland exclaimed when he recovered, staring in disbelief at Emmett and the heart. "You were off-planet?" "The bond transcends physical distance." Era explained, her composure restored by the heart's proximity. Champion Dunn felt our distress and returned. Emmett stepped forward, placing himself between Norland and House Era. "The challenge was witnessed and recorded, Prefect. You lost honorably and are bound by the terms of defeat. Stand down." "Honor?" Norland laughed bitterly. "You speak of honor while stealing our most sacred artifact. The heart belongs on Caloria, under Kaldorian control." "It remains on Caloria," Emmett countered. "Under the guardianship it has known for generations. Your claim was rejected through legitimate challenge." Norland's guards looked increasingly uncomfortable, many lowering their weapons as the legal and ceremonial implications became clear. Without official authority, and having lost the challenge, Norland's position was crumbling. In a final, desperate move, Norland drew a concealed weapon and lunged toward Emmett. "If I cannot have the heart, no one shall—" Before anyone could react, Ellen, the youngest handmaiden, intercepted the attack, using a defensive technique that redirected Norland's momentum. The prefect stumbled forward, his weapon discharging harmlessly into the ancient stone floor. Terra moved instantly, disarming Norland with professional efficiency. "By authority of House Era Security, you are detained for violation of challenge terms and attempted harm to a noble household." Council guards, alerted by the energy surge from the heart, arrived moments later to find Norland restrained and the situation contained. The senior council representative surveyed the scene with evident concern. "The council will require a full accounting of these events," he announced formally. "And they shall have it," Era assured him, "including the recorded challenge, its outcome, and Prefect Norland's subsequent violations of sacred law." As Norland was escorted away, the full household of House Era gathered around the heart, now restored to its proper place within the ancient chamber. Its pulsing had stabilized the colors, shifting in harmonious patterns that somehow reflected their collective relief and renewed connection. "What happens now?" Emmett asked acutely, aware that his unauthorized departure from the Artemis constituted a serious breach of Terran military protocol. "Now," Era replied with a slight smile, "we negotiate." The negotiations that followed were unlike any in the history of Terran-Kaldorian relations. With House Era's champion being a Terran pilot, traditional diplomatic channels were supplemented by direct noble house involvement. Commander Walsh, initially furious at Emmett's actions, was gradually brought to understand the unique opportunity presented by the situation. A permanent Terran representative within Kaldorian nobility creates unprecedented access, Mira explained during one particularly tense session. Trade agreements benefit from internal advocacy rather than external pressure. The solution ultimately reached satisfied all parties, if not perfectly. Emmett would retain his position as champion of House Era, with ceremonial duties requiring his presence on Caloria for significant portions of each standard year. During other periods, he would serve as special liaison between Kaldorian nobility and Terran authorities, facilitating the trade agreements that had been his original mission. The heart would remain on Caloria under House Era's protection, but collaborative research between Kaldorian and Terran scientists would explore its non-weapons applications, particularly its potential for advancing medical compatibility between species. 6 months after the Festival of Alignment and the confrontation with Norland, Emmett stood on the observation deck of the Artemis, watching as they approached Earth's orbital station. Beside him stood Era, experiencing her first journey to humanity's homeworld. "It's beautiful," she observed, studying the blue-green planet below. "Different from Caloria, yet somehow familiar." "Home," Emmett said simply, feeling both the pull of his birth planet and the bond that now connected him to another world. The other handmaidens joined them on the observation deck, each experiencing her own reaction to first sight of Earth. Their presence aboard a Terran vessel was historic, the first official visit of Kaldorian nobility to Earth under the new diplomatic framework. "She's moving," Era said suddenly, placing a hand on her abdomen where a slight swell had begun to show. "She always responds to new environments." Emmett placed his hand beside Era's, feeling the gentle movement of their developing child, the first human Kaldorian offspring in recorded history, made possible by the heart's biological catalyst properties. The bond between them had created something unprecedented, a living bridge between worlds. "Have you decided on a name?" Lena asked, consulting the data tablet where she had been compiling both Terran and Kaldorian naming traditions. Era and Emmett exchanged a glance, their bond conveying unspoken agreement. "Hope," Era announced, "a concept valued by both our peoples and appropriate for what she represents." As the Artemis docked with the orbital station, Emmett reflected on the extraordinary chain of events that had transformed him from ordinary pilot to champion consort diplomat, and now father to a child of two worlds. The mission parameters had certainly been exceeded in ways no one could have anticipated. Through their bond, he sensed the thoughts of his unusual family Era's quiet determination to represent her house with dignity on this historic visit. Tara's vigilant assessment of security protocols. Lena's methodical documentation of cultural observations. Mira's preparation for diplomatic engagements. Dora's fascination with Earth's spiritual traditions. And Ellen's youthful excitement at experiencing a new world. They were bonded by choice and ritual, connected by the heart's ancient power, and united by a shared purpose that transcended their different origins. Together, they represented a new kind of future, one where barriers between worlds could be bridged, not through conquest or assimilation, but through understanding, respect, and genuine connection. As Earth grew larger in the viewport, Emmett felt the heart pulse gently in its specialized container, responding to the proximity of humanity's homeworld, with curious exploration rather than defensive withdrawal. Like the child Era carried, it seemed to embrace the possibility of new connections, while maintaining its essential nature. "Ready?" Emmett asked, looking at his extraordinary family. "Together," Era replied, speaking for all of them as the airlock cycled open to reveal their Earth welcoming committee. "We face whatever comes next."